Did the far left ruin this election for Kamala Harris? Well, there are people making that argument, including people on the left and people in the Democratic Party. People who fear that the Democratic Party shifted too far to the left and catered to that base too much, and the Republicans took advantage of that in order to win. Let's evaluate that argument. And in doing so, let's take a look at a quote from Cenk Uygur of the Young Turks. So Cenk, of course, originally ran in the Democratic primary against Biden. He wanted Biden to drop out. He's very aggressive. He yells a lot. I would say he's a social democrat, very progressive guy, but also he sometimes tells people on the left that they need to pump the brakes. And he doesn't shy away from doing that when he feels he needs to do so. So I'm going to read this. In my opinion, the GOP does this every single time. What they do is they go further and further and further until they find the most extreme positions that the left is willing to defend, and they go, aha, that's what the whole left is. And every time they do that, they'll find some leftists who will go, whoop-de-doop-de-doo, I'll fall right into that trap. And I feel like screaming, it's a trap. What have I been telling you guys? We fight for trans rights. They have complete equality, and the American people are on our side, and the Democratic Party's on our side. 80% of Democrats agree with that. 52% of Americans agree with that, even despite all of this overwhelming propaganda against the trans community. But the minute you get into trans women playing in women's sports, it falls off a cliff, and all of a sudden you're down to 26%, let alone undocumented trans immigrants getting taxpayer-funded surgery. My guess is that polls around 2%. It's not an accident that the Trump team, once they started running that ad, saw great polling out of that ad and ran it again and again and again. And by then, it was their number one ad, and they had run it for $40 million worth. So are you guys saying that ad didn't hurt and we should keep going in that direction? So yeah, what he's speaking to, we've heard it before from conservatives. We've heard people talk about, hey, when these like social justice warrior types go too far, it turns people off and they vote for Donald Trump. People say, and they said this in 2016, but that excessive and extreme identity politics led to Trump winning. I don't know if I agree with that. I mean, Trump himself did identity politics too, but I guess they mean Democratic Party left-wing identity politics rather than right-wing identity politics, to be fair. But yeah, I just don't think that obsessing too much over identity is enough to throw the election. So to Uygur's point, he's certainly correct that the idea of trans women playing in women's sports is a lot more controversial of a proposition than the idea of transgender Americans having equal rights in constitutional terms, in education, in healthcare, all that stuff. That the sports issue is an issue that Republicans weaponize and they don't back down from it. Establishment Republicans, far-right Republicans, moderates, they all kind of agree with the idea that trans women should not be playing in women's sports. Now, that said, I just don't think that it's something that people care about that much compared to the economy, compared to democracy, compared to foreign policy even. I have said, and I stand by this, that it was the economic situation that led to Trump's win. This was an anti-incumbency election, and it was that way not so much because Biden is a bad president. Certainly his age kind of hurt him, but it was that way because the economy had failed to improve in a super meaningful way from 2020. It had improved, but not enough Americans were feeling that. So I just don't see people looking at their bills, looking at the past few years, and their own wallets, and being like, well, look, on the economy, I don't know who I'm going to vote for, but I saw this Trump ad that was blasting Kamala Harris for men and women's sports and transgender undocumented migrants getting gender transition surgery, and I just find that so ridiculous. The Democratic Party has gone so far left, so I have no choice but to go out there and vote for Trump now. I've made up my mind. I just don't think that's happening. And you know what else I'll say? I'll say that I don't think that Republicans have really lost elections because they were too far right necessarily. Like, I don't think Americans are consciously thinking about where they are on the political spectrum and then thinking about where the candidates are and saying, well, look, if I had to put myself on a political spectrum from 0 to 100, 0 being the most conservative, 100 being the most liberal, I think I'm a 71, but this Democratic candidate is at 79, and that's just too liberal for me, so I'm not going to vote for them. People aren't consciously thinking of that. They're not like super ideological. What's crazy, and I've heard people talk about this, is if you sit down with a normie American, someone who's like not super committed to one political party, these people will give you contradictory take upon contradictory take, or at least inconsistent with any sort of ideology. They might, for example, be extremely fiscally progressive, but extremely socially conservative. You know, it's an uncommon ideology. Like people don't really go out there and say, "Oh, I'm fiscally left and socially right." Sometimes people say that's what J.D. Vance is, but he's not. He's not. He's pretty much right wing on most issues. But yeah, normie voters who are not super well informed, voters who don't think of themselves as ideological, the stuff that they say on certain policy issues can be a hot mess. It can make them very difficult to peg down on a political compass. But I just don't think that they're like evaluating, oh, is this candidate too far left or too far right? On the point of too far right, let's keep in mind that this year Trump ran the furthest right campaign he's ever run. There's no denying that. Mass deportations, referring to his political opponents as vermin, saying immigrants are poisoning the blood of America. The only issue where he occasionally showed some progressiveness really was abortion, where he used rhetoric like, oh, my administration is going to be great for women's reproductive rights. But that's just rhetoric. That's not policy, because the fact is he appointed the 3 Supreme Court justices who helped overturn Roe versus Wade. But yeah, this is the furthest right Trump we've ever had. He lost in 2020 when he was less far right. So it wasn't his far rightness that led to his downfall in 2020. It was the pandemic. It was the economy, the public health crisis. People were dying. And now it's like he went even further right. And it seems like he got rewarded for that. But really, the Democrats were just being punished for the economy not looking as smoking hot as people thought it would be. So yeah, my response to Cenk Uygur is probably not. This type of thing probably is not turning off massive amounts of voters such that it swings elections. And I know he didn't say, oh, this made the difference, but I just don't see these ads on relatively niche issues being controlling, even if they're kind of persuasive and they kind of rub people the wrong way when they think about transgender women competing in women's sports. But yeah, certainly he's right in the sense that there are a lot of people who are on the left who, if you press them, will support really, really extreme stuff. They'll be like, oh yeah, I'll defend that. Like policy that no Democrat would ever in a trillion years say they support. But there's also that on the Republican side. Guys, have you seen those videos of people interviewing Trump supporters at rallies? And they ask, oh, who would you rather have as president? A democratically elected Joe Biden or a dictator Donald Trump? And they would go, oh, dictator Trump. Like, so it's, you know, Democrats don't make ads out of stuff like that and then show them to people and be like, Trump's supporters want him to be a dictator. Cast your vote wisely. Do not vote for Trump, who wants to be a dictator. They don't do that. And I guess, yeah, as Cenk said, Republicans do sometimes beat up on leftists who will take the bait in terms of supporting a position that seems extremely far left and very, very difficult to sell to mainstream America. There are other issues. For example, reparations. I think I heard only a third of the country supports that. Democrats were talking about that, I remember, in the 2020 primary, but it seems like they've dropped that. Biden was against reparations too, by the way. Maybe that helped him in the primary. I don't know. But yeah, I just don't think that that if we have fringe members on the left committing to extreme positions and the Republicans highlighting that's going to hurt us or help the Republicans. I just don't think that people seeing ads about supposedly extreme stuff that the other side supports will get them to vote the opposite way. So yeah, that's my take. Let me know if you agree with it in the comments. Is Cenk Uygur right? Did the Democrats move too far left? Were they too far right? Were Harris supporters too far left? I really am curious to hear what you think, because we don't have answers right now. And we probably never will. These things are just difficult to quantify. But yeah, please leave a like, comment, or subscribe to the channel. As always, thank you so much for tuning into this show, for listening to my pre-election and post-election coverage. Thank you so much for watching. I look forward to speaking to you in the next video.